and talk that you can relate.
If I told you now to come and buy a Shebi for 20,000 naira, that you would quickly get that money out. But if I told you to come and do a health check and you should put down 20,000 naira, you probably would say it's very, very expensive.
That's too much now.
Why should I go and dash one doctor? And because people are not paying attention, people are therefore getting sicker and sicker.
99.3 Nigeria Info.
It's 2025. The biggest conversations are happening on Hard Facts.
The model of Rebolo was genuinely interested in local government funds who have protested to be cancelled.
Somebody is receiving 30,000 naira after serving the country for 5 years.
From the stories shaping Nigeria's future.
And he don't put my mood for that. Whenever people are clapping, his face singers when they ought to be telling him the truth.
I mean, he did not do any remarkable thing in your state, and you are celebrating corruption time.
To real-time feedback from you, the citizens.
There is propaganda. They can never make it work. I will not support that tax reform.
If NBS is turning out very fake data to us, because this data lacks empirical evidence.
We dig deep with the decision makers, hold the powerful accountable, and keep the conversation alive on social media. Join Maryann Okon every Monday to Friday, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. for the most interesting news and current affairs show on radio.
I'm so sorry. I hate it when people make assertions from very skewed and biased places.
Hard Facts on Nigeria Info 99.3. Let's talk.
This is 99.3 Nigeria Info. 4 minutes gone past the 5 o'clock hour. And of course, as you have been listening to the show, I did tell you that we're going to be looking at one of the hottest topics for today. This evening, we're pulling the lead of a story that has haunted us as a people, especially during the elections. And you're wondering what it is. Well, a U.S. federal judge has just unsealed documents tied to a $460,000 drug money forfeiture involving President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Yes, Nigeria's sitting president. He was actually at the time linked to a narcotics investigation in the United States. These aren't conspiracy theories. These are official documents now made public. For years, the political establishment had treated this story like a myth, buried under silence, denial, and power. But now the truth is clawing its way out in daylight. What's in those documents? What do they say about the man that's leading Africa's largest democracy? And what happens when a president's past is no longer in the dark? Well, joining me to discuss this is a journalist who's been on this trail for years. It's the fearless, relentless, and very controversial David Hundeyin. So brace yourself, Lagos. David, it's so good to have you join us. I don't think that you and I have had a conversation this year. So Happy New Year. I know it's April.
Happy New Year to you too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, lovely. So, of course, everybody's trying to understand. For those who've been following during the elections, they might have some background and context. But for the average person who has no idea, give us some background. For the listeners who may not be familiar with the full story, can you give us a summary of this president's alleged involvement in, a drug-related case and the forfeiture in the U.S.?
Well, first of all, it's not alleged. It's something which has been very well documented. The story that I published in July 2022, which I guess brought it into the public consciousness, was primarily based on a 41-page affidavit which was put together by the IRS, which was part of a team of U.S. federal agencies investigating the case in 1993. So it was an IRS special agent called Kevin Moss was in charge of that leg of the investigation. Now, the reason the IRS was involved in an investigation about drugs is that part of the purview of the IRS is money laundering. And as you know, drugs and money laundering go hand in hand. So that part of the investigation focused on the fact that $1.8 million worth of proceeds of heroin trafficking was found in accounts that belonged to a fellow by the name of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So that was the IRS leg of the investigation. So it was basically what you would call an indictment. that basically drew a straight line that this is where these funds originated from. This is the heroin distribution organization. These are the main characters. So a guy by the name of Moise Akonde and his accomplices, Lee Andrew Edwards, and the other guy, Agbele, who later became a political operator on the IOFIOSHE in the States. And these are the main characters in this heroin trafficking operation. This is the account that these monies were deposited into. And then these are the relationships between these heroin traffickers and the people who control these accounts. So Bola Tinubu was identified. Bola Tinubu's wife, Remi Tinubu, was also identified as someone who ran a joint account with a wife of one of these heroin traffickers. And Lee Andrew Edwards, who was sort of the African-American sort of spearhead of the gang, the sort of retail end of the gang, he actually ended up dying in prison in the year 2004. The investigation was actually primarily about him, but it dragged in all these other people. So the story that I published in 2022 focused on that, as well as some other financial misdemeanors and potential money laundering, potential instances of money laundering that I was able to dig up with my own research. Now, after publishing that story, there's a guy called Aaron Greenspan. He's the founder of a website called plainsight.org. Now, Plainsight is a website that deals primarily with legal disclosure. So the goal of Plainsight is that things that should be on public record should be publicly available and readily so. So U.S. Federal case records, as quickly as they can be obtained from PACER, which is the U.S. Government database, they're posted on Plainsight. So the Plainsight section regarding Bola Tinubu started receiving a lot of traffic after I published that story. And the owner of Plainsight realized that my story was where this traffic was coming from. So he reached out to me. And we came up with a collaboration, an idea for a collaboration that, okay, now this story was based primarily on an IRS investigation. Now it was a federal drug investigation. So definitely the FBI and the DEA would also have been involved, because that's how federal investigations work. You have different government agencies collaborating on a single investigation. So we're going to get the records of the FBI and the DEA by sending in a Freedom of Information request. So that was done in, I believe that was November 2022, the first time we sent out an FOIA to these government agencies. This FOIA was turned down, it was denied. And the exemptions that we claimed to justify turning down the FOIA cited individual privacy concerns, privacy exemptions, as well as national security exemptions, whatever that might mean. So we appealed. I believe this was in March 2023. We appealed the refusal of the FOIAs. The appeal was turned down. So then we took it to court, which is the last option that you have. You can actually sue government agencies in the US for turning down your FOIA request, and then a judge has to hear the case. Now, normally what would happen is if you're taking it to court, you have to pay for a lawyer, and it's a very expensive process. But because Aaron has a lot of expertise in FOIA litigation specifically, even though he's not a lawyer, because he has done this for so many years, so having him was as good as having a lawyer. So we were actually able to go through this without spending, stupid money on a lawyer. So all I ended up spending money on was like filing costs for the lawsuit. So $80 here, $400 there, which is not to say that it was cheap, but it was a lot less expensive than it would have been for me if I had to pay for a US lawyer. So from May 2023 onwards, which was when the case kicked off in earnest, Aaron and I have been working. So Aaron's name appears on the case file. So it's Greenspan versus EU, USA, FBI, CIA, like that. My name doesn't appear on the case because obviously he's a US citizen and a US resident. So it was more expedient for his name to appear on the document. So we've been doing this jointly since 2023. In September 2023, we then got something called a joint status report from these 6 government agencies. And they said that, okay, we're going to release these files. The FBI specifically said we're going to release the files that we have identified as relevant to your request. And we've identified 2,500 pages. So they first identified over 70,000 pages, but then we requested that they they shrink down the number of pages to the most relevant ones, to pages that had specifically to do with Bola Tinubu, with Moise Adegboyega, with Remi Tinubu, with Chief K.O. Tinubu, and with other members of the Tinubu family, and things relating to the heroin distribution case specifically. So that number shrank down to 2,500. So we were then told that these 2,500 pages of documents will be released at the rate of about 500 a month over 5 months. And that the release will start from the end of October 2023, which actually did happen. However, instead of getting 500 pages every month, it was closer to about 300. So in every release, at least 200 pages were basically missing, were basically redacted. There was no mention whatsoever of Tinubu's name specifically in the pages that were released to the public. All mention of his name was removed. So those were the redactions. So by February 2024, when the release of those files ended, we then filed an appeal. And the appeal was specifically regarding the redaction, that we wanted the redactions taken out. So as not to waste our time and everybody's time, we then asked for something called a summary judgment. Now, what a summary judgment is that the judge, instead of watching all of us go back and forth, making arguments back and forth, which can take years, the judge makes a final decision. The judge examines the merits of both arguments and makes a final decision that should these redactions be lifted or not.
Okay.
Are these exemptions valid or not? Right. So the arguments that the DEA and the FBI made in the court filings were that the exemptions are valid because even though Bola Tinubu is a public official and Nigerians have a right to know what their public officials, that Nigerians have a right to know what their government is up to, that doesn't extend to knowing what specific public officials might have been up to, which I thought was an incredible argument to make, because certainly you wouldn't make that argument if it was an American public official. But I guess Black lives really don't matter to some people, apparently. So obviously we pushed back on that, and we've been going back and forth since I think November last year. So it was Tuesday last week that the judge, Beryl Howell, delivered this ruling, a summary judgment, and the summary judgment was that the reasons being given for these exemptions are completely nonsensical, that they make no sense, that these exemptions are not valid. So basically the rationale behind these reductions has mixed. So they have to go back and produce those documents again, and this time using the knowledge that those exemptions are not valid. So basically all the missing pages have to be put in this time around. So the same files are going to be released, but with those missing pages this time around. The pages that make mention of Tinubu's name. So that's what the judgment is.
I'm curious because before we get to the part where the government has already reacted, everyone's asking what exactly is going to be released in the redacted files that would change, as in, because the government is saying, look, these files have been public. It's been public knowledge. The information that we're talking about has been public knowledge, and it doesn't change anything. So the average Nigerian is wondering, what will we hear that would, change anything? Is there anything new in these redacted files? What information will come out of it that would be new to us, and what do we do with this information?
So the government and the government spokespeople who are saying, "Oh, there's nothing new. These things have been in the public domain for 30 years." They're being clever by half, and they're counting on your credulity. Let me just put it that way. They're counting on you not knowing your hypothetical backside from your hypothetical elbow, because what has been in the public domain for 30 years, as I mentioned earlier, is an IRS affidavit from 1993. The records from the FBI and the Drug Enforcement Administration have not been in the public domain for 30 years. In fact, the first time anyone ever saw those records at all was in 2023, when they were partially released as a result of this same lawsuit that Aaron and I put out. So, what people should expect to see is basically the files that were released in 2023 and 2024, an expanded version of those files. I feel like many people didn't actually read those files when they came out, because even though those files were redacted, It didn't take a genius to work out if you actually read through or just scanned through those files what was contained in those files, because the entirety of those files that were released was basically discussing a huge drug trafficking investigation. So the only thing was that all mention of Bola Tinubu's name and the names of his family members were taken out, hence those missing pages, and hence the argument that was made in court that, oh, those missing pages should remain missing because we want to protect his privacy. You should use a privacy exemption. Now the judge has taken away that privacy exemption. So what is going to happen is that those missing pages are then going to be released along with the other pages that we've already seen. So that's what people should expect to see.
There are those who have wondered, and I'm sure that many people asked you this question the first time you came up with the investigation. There were people who alleged that you were being paid by the opposition. Those who didn't think you were paid by the opposition were wondering, what was your motivation? What is still your motivation? Because you've mentioned that you spent some money, which is not little. I mean, no matter how little it might seem, but you spent some money and you've seen someone you could partner with. One would wonder, what's your motivation? The guy is president. Is it going to change anything?
Well, my motivation then is the same as my motivation now. My motivation then is, first of all, I think of myself as an individual that has a lot of agency. I don't think of myself as a victim. So I cannot accept that my narrative will be defined primarily by the fact that, oh, you know, my country is governed by so-and-so person, so there's nothing I can do. I have a bad government. And I'm like, what's the point of being a journalist and having a platform and having some sort of power to effect some sort of political change, or at least influence people toward it, if you don't use it to better the society that you come from, right? So that was my motivation then. That remains my motivation now. So yes, it did cost me a bit of money. It's not a secret that I work very hard. I have a day job, which I guess many people don't realize. Journalism isn't the only thing that I do. It's the thing I'm most known for, but I actually have a day job. I'm a project manager, right? And I work very hard. So I refuse to think of myself as a victim. I feel like as a journalist, one has power. And I feel like it's a waste of that power that one has if one doesn't use it to try and better the environment that one is in. So I could see very clearly in 2022 that the candidate that was being prepped to run on the platform of the ruling party, which would make him a forerunner to become president, was a candidate that had a lot of baggage in his history to suggest that this would probably be the worst president in Nigeria's history. And that's why I did what I did then. I think history has borne me out since then that, you know, based on the evidence of the presidency that has since, you know, taken place, I think it's fair to say that even Ibrahim Babangida has been given a run for his money. So again, people can see I wasn't just saying these things at the time. And you know, the constant insinuations that are being made, oh, this guy is being paid by someone to do this. Or what, I think people can now see that there is such a thing as a Nigerian who has a spine, right? We exist. There is such a thing as a Nigerian who just will not let something go because he believes in something, even though it comes at some significant personal cost. We exist. So this idea that every Nigerian is just this sort of transactional animal, I think it's information warfare. It's an idea that has been planted into our subconscious. There's some sort of social engineering that has taken place. But I consider myself to be visual evidence that not all of us are the same, that there is such a thing as a Nigerian who can choose to be different. So if I can do it, everyone else is eminently capable of it too.
Lovely. Let me read to you a snippet or a bit of what Bayo Nanuga said, reacting to the development. He said, and I quote, "There's nothing new to be revealed. The report by Agent Moss of the FBI and DEA has been in public space for more than 30 years. The reports did not indict the Nigerian leader." Onanuga confirmed that government lawyers were reviewing the U.S. judge's ruling, arguing that the documents add no fresh dimension to the president's past. Now, I want to ask, because again, yes, this is great news for people to say, oh, well, information is now public. Can we look at the documents? Can we see what the documents are when they are released? So everybody is curious. They want to see what's in that document. But the bigger question is there a potential for legal consequences within or without Nigeria? I mean, given that this matter has resurfaced again, people will be wondering, Will there be any internal or external, investigation, pressure on the administration? I mean, does it change anything? You, again, are a journalist, so you obviously know how things work in your country. Is there going to be any push or pressure? Again, I ask, will it change anything?
That's a very difficult question to answer. I think whether it changes anything or not will depend primarily on the mood of the Nigerian people. If the Nigerian people are happy for it to not change anything, then it won't change anything. My main for me, the main significance of these documents being released isn't so much what it will or will not do in Nigeria, but the fact that the US government is sending a signal. And what I mean by that is that when this all began, the president in the US was Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. And throughout the process, it was made clear in a multiplicity of ways that the government establishment, regardless of what, even, and I'm even including the court in this and the judge, because the judge initially made some very, very incredible preliminary decisions. And for all the world, it looked like there is just no way that this US government has any intention whatsoever of letting these things come out. That these things are going to be there till. In fact, as I recall, when the case first kicked off, you can actually read through the court filing. There was actually a filing made by, I believe it was the FBI, where it was stated that the earliest that they foresee any sort of disclosure potentially could be 2026. That was what they said at first. Like, I think basically trying to scare us off that, just give up.
So are you because I have a minute before I go on a quick break. Are you saying to my audience and to Nigerians that the Biden administration was trying to cover or keep this particular document under until this administration was over? Are you saying that the Trump administration probably might not be in the same headspace with the Biden administration? Is there some sort of conspiracy of protecting one over the other? I mean, I'm trying to understand. Are you saying Trump is not in any way open to covering anything up, and then Biden was open to that?
So I'm not saying that Trump is a good guy here. I'm not saying Trump is trying to uncover a secret while Biden was the one trying to cover it. For the avoidance of doubt, I am absolutely saying that the Biden administration was trying to protect this person. That absolutely was the case. Okay. However, it's not so much that the Trump administration is the good person now, but it's more the case that the Trump administration is going in a different direction. Okay. Trump administration probably sees more value in working with a different person, and they have made the strategic geopolitical decision to cut this particular person loose.
We have to go on a break.
That's how empires work.
We have to go on a break. David Hundeyin is with us, and we'll be right back. It's still Hard Facts, 99.3 Nigeria Info.
99.3 Nigeria Info. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to your number one talk, news, and sports station. This is Nigeria Info.
Nigeria Info.
There's a reason why over 1 million people tune into Hard Facts every day. We discuss in-depth stories with sources behind the facts.
The Lagos State High Court sitting convicted, suspended the Chicago certificate story is never going away, is it? Show with stories for the day.
You hear diverse voices and opinions.
And she was meeting campaign with her husband, knowing that.
You should not be happy because there is nothing to happy about.
Yeah, it's quite pathetic the way the country is going.
We distinguish each story accurately with analysis.
It's Hard Facts with Maryann Okon on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
We're back. David Hundeyin, who's a journalist, has joined us, and we're talking about the recent court ruling to make the files about an investigation that had been going on about a drug-related case in the United States. It's literally linked to a narcotics investigation in the United States. And of course, a judge has actually ruled that these files be made public. In other words, make sure that everybody who inquires of it is able to see everything as it is, verbatim, no files missing. And as David has told us, the redacted part of the files are what's going to be made public, in addition to the ones that had been made public previously. Of course, many have queried David's motivation and why he started digging into this. Could he have been paid by the opposition? Because one would have said the timing was very, very close to the elections. Could it have been that he had intentions? He had a preferred candidate in the elections, and hence, he's digging. But he has told us that he had nothing to do with the elections or who he supported. But David, before we went on that break, you were trying to tell us what you thought about the difference between the Biden administration and the Trump administration, and you have said that you thought that the Biden administration was bent on not making that information public, and that the Trump administration is going in a different direction. I don't want to press on that particular aspect because there's a lot of geopolitics going on right now with the tariffs and all of that. We'll come to that, but let's come back to the judicial system in Nigeria. Again, as a journalist, I'm sure that you know and have seen and have heard all that's been happening. Before now, you and I would say that the Nigerian judiciary would be the last hope of the common person. And if we are looking at this redacted files, when it does come out and we all have the copies in our hands and whatever we make of it, do you think that if someone decides that they're going to sue Mr. President on whatever grounds, and I don't know what it would be for anyone who wants to, do you think that it would fly?
Again, I think that whether it flies or not depends on the mood of Nigerians.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that, David? When you say the mood of what exactly?
What I mean by that is that even the outcome of the supposed election tribunals in 2023, whether people realize it or not, was determined in large part by the fact that by choosing to not react, Nigerians in fact reacted a certain way, and that was interpreted as open season. It's fine to do whatever you want. If the judiciary feels sufficiently feels sufficient political pressure from the streets, from everyday Nigerians, if the people in the judiciary feel like their drivers and their cooks and their maids and their gatemen are not going to be happy with them when they go home, if they if they don't do the right thing, then they will fix up. But the sort of that learned apathy that Nigerians have, that learned helplessness, that socially engineered idea that you can't do anything, you have no agency, and that you're just a victim, that is what is responsible for the judiciary seemingly getting away with absolute murder. So I feel like this isn't going to be any different. I feel like even if someone I follow on social media said this very brilliantly the other day. He said, if this person, who shall remain unnamed, if a video emerges of this person smoking like crack cocaine and shooting somebody dead on tape, it's not really going to change much in the minds of certainly his base, because his base does not support him for rational reasons, and that the rest of the population is going to look at the reaction of his base and then decide that, well, we can't do anything. Since they are not doing anything, then we too can't do anything about it. That's the tragedy, I think. This thing is called the tragedy of commons, where everybody feels like it's somebody else's job to respond or to react in a certain way. And since they didn't do it, well, then I don't have any responsibility either.
Let me put you on the spot, David, as a Nigerian. What do you think is responsible for that mindset that you have just described? Because I always ask people when they say, oh, Nigerians need to rise up. For example, people were killed in Plateau and the NSA said, enough is enough. People need to rise up. And I'm wondering to myself, and do what? What does people need to rise up mean in this instance when you watch your family killed in broad daylight? What exactly do you think informs the mindset that you have just described of Nigerians? That lethargy, for the want of a better way to describe it. Why do you think that we have become this people?
I think there has been a lot of social engineering that has taken place in Nigeria without our knowledge. And when I say social engineering, I'm not just referring to engineering from the Nigerian government itself. I mean engineering even from outside Nigeria. I think one of the biggest disservices we have done to ourselves as a people is that we have failed to recognize our sheer size in the world and the fact that we exist in a global context. We were raised with this idea that Nigeria is an island. Like the world begins at Jibia as this border in Sokoto and the world ends at Seme. So Nigeria is this place that exists independent of whatever is happening in the world, which is not true. Right. So the same sort of geopolitical games and psychological warfare and all those things that were done to the inhabitants of Soweto during the apartheid regime in South Africa, those things were done to us in Nigeria too. The only difference is that the people in Soweto know that those things were done to them, and we have no idea. We have this very hilariously mistaken idea that we are this sort of sovereign high agency people that we absolutely are not. So there's a lot of psychological warfare. There's a lot of social engineering that has gone into making Nigerians what they are. So if you think, for example, how is it that what the things that appear to be the most interesting or the most regularly visible pieces of content on all Nigerian social platforms, be it your TikToks and your Facebooks and your Twitters and your even Naira lands, everything almost without exception is a specific type, a very narrow type of content. And anything outside it just doesn't fly. Why is that? Is it because Nigerians are so narrow-minded that these are the only things Nigerians engage with? Or is it that some algorithm somewhere, some proprietary algorithm, right? Proprietary meaning it's private property, it's owned by someone who has their own agenda. Some algorithm somewhere has determined that this is where this population of people should be kept psychologically. This is what we want this population of people to discuss. So if you are on American social spaces, they talk a lot about political issues. Political issues are probably they're probably more popular than even entertainment on American social spaces, right? If you mention the word Trump on American Twitter, you've started an explosion. On Nigerian social platforms, it's skit making and content creation, it's comedy or attempted comedy, it's sex, that's a very big thing, or sex adjacent stuff like relationship talk and marriage, and that's it, or food, right? This is not by accident. This is not because the lazy way of viewing it is that, Nigerians are just narrow people, Nigerians are dumb. No, Nigerians are not dumb. It's not true. I believe that there are a series of these sort of algorithmic decisions that have been taken at sovereign level, and we were not in the room where these decisions were taken, that different parts of the world, these are the types of information that should be pushed on them. So in Africa, for those who, I guess, their geopolitical agenda currently rules the planet, it's most expedient for Africans to not realize that they're part of the world. So it's most expedient for Africans to not even be in the global conversation. So I
want to beg to differ that we're not. I mean, maybe we can argue based on percentage, the percentage of people who are, pushing the comedy, all the things you've stated. But there are people who obviously are concerned about the day-to-day activities of politicians and the guys who govern us. I mean, you see trends on social media of a Wike, for example, a Tinubu, or the things that happen the percentage might not be as high as you expect it to be. But I don't necessarily agree with you that we're totally numb to the things that are happening and that it literally goes over our head. I don't want to believe that.
Yeah, but the thing is, those things that you mentioned, they go far, but they don't go far enough. So if you are discussing politics and you don't understand that your politics, as local as it is, exists in a wider context, then you're wasting your time. Then you're basically discussing show business, right? If you're spending all your time discussing Wike and Tinubu and Atiku and Obi, and that's what you think of as politics, and you don't understand that even these people exist in a wider context, and that the person, for example, it's next to impossible to become president of Nigeria without making a pilgrimage somewhere to this place called Chatham House in central London? Why is that? Just out of interest. These are the questions that nobody asks. It's almost impossible to become president of Nigeria without being friendly with the US government. Why is that? What are the levels of control that global entities or international entities have in this your supposedly local politics? So these people you think of as your local people, you'll be surprised to know that from when they were in their 20s or so, they've already been identified by these international entities that you don't even know of. They have been taken for all sorts of programs that you've never heard of. So all these your Yalis and your Mandela Washingtons and your IVLPs. I mean, I've been nominated for an IVLP when I was at Channels TV. People don't know that these are the levels of soft power through which future leaders are identified by the empire. So you yourself, that you are discussing your Nigerian politics on Twitter, you don't realize that you are not involved in the process of choosing your own leadership. You're not involved in that process because the actual leadership selection process is taking place in closed spaces. It's taking place at the U.S. Consular General's residence in Ikoyi. That's where it's happening. It's not happening in the public space. So when that leadership selection has taken place in those places, then they present you with this tiny selection of supposed leaders for you to choose from. And then you spend your whole day discussing this tiny group of people that has been put in front of you, and you call that politics. No, it's not. It's entertainment you're discussing.
Okay. David, I want to push you on a few questions, but then I see a lot of people want to be part of the conversation. By the way, we're live, facebook.com/Nigeria Info FM. We're also live on YouTube, Nigeria Info FM. You could be part of the conversation. If you're listening from outside of the country, on WhatsApp, you could send us a message, 0809597585. I'll take it again, 0809597585. The phone lines will be open in a bit. Now, let's talk bigger picture here. You've talked about the fact that, look, there might be no level of accountability whatsoever if we, the people, don't get involved. That said, but what role do you believe that Nigerian journalists and the media should play in holding power to account, especially when the stakes are really, really high?
So the reason I'm laughing is that there's a very easy answer that I could give, but at the same time, I understand that people's bread is buttered where it's buttered. So it's very difficult to do this job of holding power accountable when the power that you want to hold accountable answers to the same power that you yourself answer to. So it ends up becoming this very complex dance that we do. So the Nigerian situation where you're trying to hold Nigerian politicians or Nigerian political leaders accountable. But these Nigerian political leaders were put into power by people who are not Nigerians, right? And then you yourself, as a journalist, you're working for an organization which is funded entirely by grants that are coming from people who are not Nigerians. And ultimately, the two sources are converging in the same Washington, D.C. So both the corrupt politician that you're trying to hold accountable and you, the crusading journalist, are both owned by the same puppet master in D.C. So how are you holding the politician accountable?
So, but you're painting a very bleak picture, and then the average person who's listening to you say, so how do we dig ourselves out of this hole? Where do we go? Because it looks like you're telling us that we have been, somewhat locked in or caved in by world powers and our elites who's, like you say, are in cahoots with them. So what does the average Nigerian need to do?
You are locked in if you agree to be locked in, because I made the decision personally to not be locked in. I decided to do what people thought was crazy and go off on my own. It started as a Substack newsletter before it became like an independent platform on its own. And I decided to do things completely differently, to go off grid, to be independent. And I knew that by doing this, I'm sacrificing any future access to American.
So are you advising every other Nigerian journalist to go off grid? Let's all be living in hiding and then telling these stories, because maybe that might be the solution.
I'm saying if you feel strongly enough about the state of the society that you live in, if you genuinely feel strongly enough, and if you genuinely believe strongly enough that you deserve better, and if you are genuinely angry enough with the status quo, and you are genuinely fed up enough That's the natural reaction. That's what you will do. I feel again, and this goes back to what I said earlier about conditioning and psychological warfare and mental programming. I feel like a lot of us in Nigeria we have been programmed in such a way that when we express displeasure with Nigeria, we don't really mean it. We complain and talk, and it looks like we're the angriest people in the world, but it's an inch deep. It's not genuine. We go on Twitter Spaces and we lament and we talk with all this vim, but really we don't really believe what we're saying. Because I feel like if you believe half of those things you are saying, if you are really that angry, if you are really that fed up, then going into exile and whatnot, that should be the least that you can do if you genuinely believe in the sanctity of your mission. But if on the other hand it's just a fashionable thing to say and you don't really care that much, it's not really that serious to you, then I can completely understand why you would be like, you know what, please, there's a $2,000 grant here, Joe. Like, I cannot come and kill myself, right? And that right there is the issue. Nigeria is a country of people who cannot come and kill themselves. So even though they are already dying, they cannot come and kill themselves. So those of us who have made the decision to come and kill ourselves, we look like crazy people.
Okay, David Hundeyin is still with us live via Zoom, ladies and gentlemen. Let's join the conversation. 0201-277-0993, 0201-465-7190. You can join the conversation. David Boala has decided that he will come tomorrow to speak again on this same issue, although he had already said yesterday that this is a non-issue. Nothing's going to come of it. But then, of course, we will give him a right to, say what he has to say from the presidency's perspective. But join the conversation. 30 seconds. Go straight to the point, please. 0201-277-0993, 0201-465-7190. Only for the ladies. We're encouraging the ladies to call in because you see the mail line. You have to be an expert to get through it. Hello. Welcome to Hard Facts.
Good evening, Maryann. Good evening to your guest. Jonathan is my name.
30 seconds.
I think your guest is a little bit correct. Something needs to happen to us as people. I don't know what it is, but I think it's education. Even the people that are the percentage of us, Maryann, that is nowhere, that is not on social media, not on anywhere, is significant. It's huge. So I don't know what we need to happen to us as a people. For us to be, even locally, we are not even informed of what is happening to us locally, not to talk of a world. You understand? So the little percentage of us that are informed, that are talking, is not significant at all. So I think maybe the people leading us, they have intimidated us to the point that
your 30 seconds is over.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. 30 seconds so that we can let everybody, chime in. The ladies, your number 0201-465-7190. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, my name is Engineer Kundai. I'm calling from Ikorodu. The question I want to ask Mr. Hundeyin is that what's the assurance that this missing part of the judgment will be released? And is there any time frame for the release of the missing parts of the judgment? That's number one. The second question is that at the end, even if the documents are released and so on, the people mentioned, can they still be tried in a law court?
All right. Thank you very much. David?
So very briefly, yes, the entire purpose of this summary judgment was about specifically those missing pages. As I said, the files have already been released before. It's just that some pages were missing because of redactions. So we went back to court to argue that those redactions should be removed. And that's the order that the courts just granted, that those exemptions have been taken away, so the redaction should be removed. And those documents should be reproduced with the missing pages. So that's the exact judgment that has come. And now regarding the time frame, the deadline that has been given for the agency to present a schedule for release is May 2. That doesn't mean that the documents will come out on May 2. That means that May 2 is the deadline that the agencies should submit a timetable to the court, timetable showing when they're going to release these documents. So the last time we had this issue was in 2023. The joint status report, which is what they're supposed to submit on May 2, the joint status report came out on September 10, 2023. And the agreement was that they will start producing these documents from October.
Okay.
which they did. They started producing from October 31, 2023. So using that as a guide, you would say the time between when this joint status report is filed or made to when the documents are coming out should be about 2 months. So we're looking maybe sometime in July.
Okay. All right. Hello. Welcome to Hard Facts.
Yeah. Lady, good evening.
You need to speak up so that we can hear you.
Good evening. Oh.
Yes. 30 seconds. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Good evening to our guest. I want to thank him. He has played his own role. For me, Nigerian president is the most powerful president. And they say Nigeria is a sovereign country, sovereign nation, right? With all this revolution, I don't think anything will come out of it. But my happiness today, most of these people holding office, I ask them not to contest them because most things that people don't know about them, the secret will be unveiled.
All right.
And that is what is happening today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for calling. I do appreciate it. Hello, welcome to Hard Facts. Dear, I'm so sorry we lost that call. Please call us back. Hello.
Hello.
Good evening. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, I'm calling from Lagos, from Ikeja, Ogba. My name is Vincent.
30 seconds.
Okay, yeah, thanks, David, for bringing all this to the fore. I think everybody asking the question of why is this, why is that, Nigerians need to be in the know consistently. And I appreciate the work that he's doing. And I think that it will behove people that are smart to take this up, maybe translate it into other languages for people to understand the gravity of what we are dealing with. Okay. Because the personalities of the people that lead us need to be out in the fore for everybody to know what is happening.
All right.
So thanks very much, David, and thank you for putting this out there.
Thank you very much for calling. We do appreciate it. Hello, welcome to Hard Facts. Turn off your radio, please.
Yeah, hi.
Good
evening.
What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Can you hear me?
What's your name?
Yeah, my name is Ogonna.
All right, go ahead.
Oh, hi, David. I just wanted to say that everything that you said is very clear, and we're not very aware of this involvement of the UK, the US involvement in our politics, like you see. However, I would like to disagree with Nigerians are not, we don't take it bone deep because the issues that we talk about, we are angry enough. But can we all be on the forth? Can we all go into hiding? Can we all fight as you are? Not necessarily, right? I think that we are angry enough. We might not have as much information as we should, but we are angry enough. And thank you for bringing a lot into limelight. And I would like to know more about the UK or US involvement in our politics.
Okay. Hello, welcome to Hard Facts.
Good evening, Maryann.
Good evening. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
It's Pastor Ladipo, calling from Urile in Sarigom. I want to ask David a question. Supposing these things comes to limelight now, and eventually Nigerian media are being banned by NBC, that none of this news should be aired. How do you think it will be possible for people to hear it? Because we are talking about people even in the rural area where there is no network. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Pastor Ladipo, for calling. David.
So first of all, I don't think it's feasible for the NBC to do that. And there's even a whole legal gray area whether the NBC even has the power to do that. But even if they were to attempt to do it, I think it would create the mother of all Streisand effects. So the Streisand effect is basically when, in trying to conceal information, you make it more popular. You turn it into forbidden fruit, which makes everybody.
You build some sort of curiosity, so everybody now wants to say, "What's this thing about?"
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it would be a terrible mistake to attempt that.
All right, in case you're just joining us, David Hundeyin is with us in the studio, well, virtually, and we've been talking about the files. This almost want to call it the X-Files. That's what's coming to my mind now. But most importantly, everyone's wondering what's in the... Well, it's been... There are parts of the files, as David has told us, that were redacted that had or carried the name of Mr. President in a case that was related to narcotics, okay? And this is something that came up just before the elections, during the elections, after the elections. And David has told us that he's gone through a court process or court processes. And finally, a judge ruled that, hey, these documents need to be made public. Nigerians need to know about what had happened in the past life of Mr. President. But of course, the presidency has come out to say, well, it doesn't really mean anything. These documents have always been in the public, eye. It's not going to change anything. Mr. President will still be president. But what do you make of this? I want to go to social media quickly and just read some of the messages that are coming up on our Facebook and our YouTube and on X. So please bear with me. I have very little time, so I'm just going to run through a few of these messages, not all of them, just a few of them. So please bear with me while I go into those messages. Okay. This one says, what David Hundeyin is saying in local parlance is that Trump no just send their papa. Another person here says, David Hundeyin is a brilliant guy and is always valid with his point. I've been following him for years. Unfortunately, those who are comfortable with the oppressors are all ready to attack his views. Babatunde from Lekki Phase 1. Another person here says, good afternoon, Maryann. My name is Tara from Lekki. Did I hear your guest say the document is a 2,500 page? Yes. That will mean I will have sleepless nights because Maryann, I will create time to read that thing when it comes out. But is your guest really telling us that world power controls our election, meaning our votes no they count? David should answer that quickly. And this last message says, Maryann, thanks to David for his exposition. What will be the new FBI DA release? Will these be enough to prosecute our president? And this is from Ayo. David, I'm coming back to you. I have just 60 seconds, less than 60 seconds for you to respond.
Yeah, so the lady that was asking, I believe she was asking, okay, let me start with the most recent one, which was, will it be enough to prosecute? As far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm aware, the sitting president has immunity. You can't prosecute a sitting president.
Yep, absolutely.
But the legal, I guess, where there might be some legal jeopardy is regarding potentially the next election. Potentially, there's an argument to be made that would disqualify him from running for office. That's a conversation for a lawyer to have anyway. And then the question before that, I believe, was I don't remember the question.
Somebody was asking if it was 2,500 page, and I said yes. But there was another question. Oof.
Which
I've forgotten. I've also forgotten because I was trying to run through. But we don't have time. We have to go now. I have just 30 seconds. But David, I want to thank you for coming on the show to explain to us. And when these documents are out, we will bring you back so that we can look at them, especially the part that has been summarized. And then, of course, we'll pick it one after the other. And I'm guessing that you will also post them on social media?
Absolutely. All
right. David Hundeyin, journalist, investigative journalist, joining us live via Zoom. Thank you so much, David, once again, for being part of the conversation. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, Lagos, that's the show. I want to thank you all for being part of the conversation. Tomorrow, maybe Wednesday, Daniel Boala joins us, of course, to give his own points or the presidency's perspective on this documents that have been made public or will be made public in no time. My name is Maryann Okon. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and X, MIMIEYO. I love you, Lagos. Bye-bye.
For talk.
99.3 Nigeria Info.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
Hey there, mums and dads. Did you know that some children are picky eaters and also do not get enough fruits and vegetables from their diet? Well Kid Baby and Infant Syrup is a food...
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.